I have a saying that I use an awful lot, and my family knows it, as do people I work with. It goes, if it's not on a list, it doesn't exist. Now, you can take that to extremes, but what we usually know is if we have things we need to remember, then we might be able to put them on a list to help us remember those things. QuickBooks actually has a to-do list that you can use, but more importantly is the fact that almost everything that you do in QuickBooks is based on a list. QuickBooks keeps lists of customers, vendors, all kinds of things that we need to track. If we know how to add things to the list, how to modify the list by sorting it, rearranging it, maybe even showing or hiding information, then we're starting to get good control over QuickBooks. In this chapter, that's exactly what we'll do, learning how to use, take control of, and master lists. In QuickBooks, one way to begin using and seeing and working with lists is to actually use the Lists menu. So I'll go up and I'll click on Lists, and this will give us kind of an overview of what lists are available. Of course, we've worked with the chart of accounts, so we're familiar with that, but we can now see some of the other options that exist. We have an item list for the things that we sell. We have fixed asset item lists. We have price levels, sales tax codes, other names, customer and vendor profiles, and even some templates. There really are an awful lot of lists in QuickBooks. It's the basis of everything that we do. I'm going to go ahead and use the customer and vendor profile list and move over to its flyout. Again, there are a variety of options here, but I'm thinking that I want to work with a fairly simple list. Let's go ahead and start with the payment terms. This list opens up in something called the List View, and you can see that the QuickBooks files come predefined with some of these items. For example, there's a couple that give a discount if people pay within a certain amount of time. We also have consignment, due on receipt, net 15, net 30, and net 60, all of which are fairly standard within business. One thing that I know is that I never do anything on consignment, so we'll do the easy things first. Whenever you need to delete an item, remembering that if it has any activity associated with it that you will not be able to actually delete it, I'm going to right-click on consignment and choose delete. And I'll verify that that's what I want to do. And that begins to clean up my list. The next thing I want to do, though, is actually create a brand new item. I can do that by moving down to the bottom left-hand corner and clicking on the Terms button. Choosing New from the top, or I could have pressed Control-N. And in any list, when you click New, you're going to see a form that allows you to fill it out. Naturally, whichever list you're working with will determine what fields you need to fill out. In this case, I'm trying to fill out the terms that I want to be paid upon. Since I provide training, one of the options I might have as a company is that I want to be paid prior to training. So that's what I'm going to give the name for the term. This particular item is a little difficult to define because prior to training is not something that QuickBooks can track. For example, when I create an invoice, QuickBooks is very good at saying it's due 30 days after the invoice date. Prior to training, though, is something that QuickBooks can't know. So actually, I'm not going to be able to do a lot of definitions here. I do want to go through the options with you, though. Whenever you set a payment term, you can use standard options or date-driven options. Standard would include things that are due in a certain number of days. For example, net 30, net 60, net 90, and you simply enter the number of days. You also can provide a discount percentage if it's paid within so many days. And this, of course, is how we create things like a 10% discount if they pay within 10 days, otherwise it's due 30 days. That's a way of kind of enticing your customers to pay sooner rather than later. You as a company need to decide if you're willing to take the discount for getting your money sooner. A lot of times it actually is worth 2 or 3% to get the cash in hand. The second type of thing that we can have for terms is called date-driven. Net due before a certain day of the month, or due the next month if issued with so many days. Now you see that these are grayed out. In order to get them active, I would simply need to click on the date-driven option, and then they're all available. So using this feature, I can say it's due before the 15th day of the month, for example. Maybe I like to get all of my payments in before the 15th, so I can do all of my accounting on my end by the 30th. What the second option gives us is the option to say, what if I bill somebody on the 12th of the month? If I bill them on the 12th, do I still want them to be due on the 15th? That wouldn't be reasonable. So, due the next month if issued within so many days of the due date gives people a realistic number of days to actually get the bill paid. Once again, we can also give a discount percentage of a certain amount if it's paid within so many days. So all in all, setting up any kind of term is very easy. You would simply need to work on each one at a time. Most of the ones that are here will probably do. It's only if you need to create something unique or creative for your business where you would be adding a lot of them. To add an additional one, I could click Next, but since I'm done, I'm simply going to click OK. And that will take me back to the list, and I can now see my new item prior to training has been added. I'm going to move over to the right side of my screen and close out this list. Now you don't have to. You actually can have multiple lists open at any given time. But I like to keep it clean, keep things closed down a little bit, so I'll go ahead and close that. Come back over to the Lists menu. Come to Customer and Vendor Profiles, and this time I want to do a customer message. When I get ready to create invoices, I like to put little happy sayings at the bottom or positive thoughts. Again, you can see that several are already included. We can mark them inactive or we can delete them just like any other list. Or I can press Control-N or come down to Customer Message to create a new one. I want to say a little bit about training here, so I'll go ahead and type a message that says, "We appreciate the opportunity to train with you." The main reason I wanted to bring you into this particular one is because this has a spell check, and I love this. Even though I've looked at this very carefully, and I think I've spelled everything correctly, I can actually click the spelling button to check and see if all of my spelling is correct. It says the spell check is complete and everything is fine. That's always good because it doesn't really give a good sense of professionalism if you send out invoices with messages that have typos in them, especially when you're a computer company and you're supposed to know how to use a spell check. Once again, I can use Next, or I can cancel, or I can say OK. I'll go ahead and say OK and close out of this list as well. Let me go into one last list, and the reason I'm actually moving around here quite a bit is I just want to show you different types of lists that we have. Let's come down and let's take a look at, again, Customer and Vendor Profiles, and let's see if there's anything else in here that looks interesting. How about the payment methods? It's always good to be able to get money, and once again they've given us several defaults that we can use. Cash, check, and a variety of different credit cards, and they've even added a couple of new entries recently, debit cards and gift cards, since those are so popular. If I don't accept American Express, I might not want to have that, but I might use it at some point in time. So instead of deleting it like I did initially with my first list, I'm going to right-click, and I'm just going to say Make the Payment Method Inactive. Now you'll notice that it goes away, and the reason I wanted to do this is to remind you that at the bottom of our list we have a checkbox that says Include Inactive. Currently I'm not seeing any inactive accounts, and for day-to-day work that's probably good. But if I click this checkbox, now you can see that American Express shows up, but it does have an X in the left corner telling me that this is currently marked as an inactive account. You'll also see as I move over different accounts, I have a little X for a cursor, meaning if I click on it, I can turn those into inactive accounts as well.